Welcome back in, everybody, here to the Auburn Undercover YouTube channel and the Auburn Undercover podcast. My name is Nathan King, joined here on this fine morning by Jason Caldwell on the War Eagle Wakeup. So welcome in, everybody, and a happy Monday to you all. We'll be looking ahead to what's going on in Auburn this week. But Jason, first, I guess we'll start with Auburn basketball. Their result on Saturday going to Florida. That was a game we talked about last week. After the Alabama win, so much emotion. Not only that, was it a hard fought game for Auburn on Wednesday night, where they definitely poured a lot into that and getting a big ranked win at home over Bama. But Auburn was essentially on a short week because Thursday they had a light practice, and then Friday they practiced and then went to Gainesville. Not opening this up by making excuses. I'm just saying the caveat here with this game at Florida. Not only was this going to be extremely difficult because you don't win there. You don't win at Florida. It doesn't happen. Florida also had an entire week off. So they had 5 or 6 days to prepare for this game. Auburn, to me, looked spent at the beginning. They did not look like they were playing with as much effort and energy as the Gators. That's something that's definitely going to displease Bruce Pearl. And I think at times, Jason, you saw, in my opinion, kind of the worst offense we've seen from this team this season. If you're Auburn, you hope it stays that way. You hope this game is your worst, maybe not your worst overall offensive performance, but probably the weakest you've looked in a game overall. You hope that's the case moving forward.
Yeah, I thought there were a couple things. You're right. I thought the energy level wasn't quite there. And that, hey, we see that happen on the other end of the spectrum when Auburn plays at home. We see Auburn be the energy takers and the ones that are taking the energy to other teams. And we saw Florida do that Saturday. I thought they were the ones that had the energy early on. And then you're right, it translated to Auburn's offensive game. I thought Auburn settled a lot early on. I thought Florida's length had a big part of that as well. Auburn just never got comfortable. They did in the second half some, but it also started with getting the ball back to the basket again and doing some of those things. This team's just not going to be built on settling for threes. It's just not who they are. When threes come out of the offense and out of that running of the offense, it's okay. But quick threes are not what this team needs to be doing. And they got into a little bit of that rhythm against Alabama, and it worked out okay some. But it was such an up and down, back and forth game against Alabama, and they kind of rode the momentum. But when you flip that and you play a good defensive team, then you got to get back to who you are. And it took 25 minutes or 30 minutes for that to happen on Saturday. By then it was too late. And so, and the other part of it is what we saw Saturday is college basketball. Now, not to that extent, but we saw Tennessee go on the road and just get bombed by Texas A&M. I think I looked back last week and there were 15 top 25 teams that lost last week. 15 of them. I think 13 of those were on the road. Those were to unranked teams. I'm not counting the teams that lost to other ranked teams. So it is the world of college basketball now, where you just go, hey, who knows? Every game you play, especially on the road, is a game you can lose no matter who it is. And we continue to see that. And so for Auburn, the most important thing now is winning home games. Winning home games the rest of the way. And then you have road games at Georgia, Tennessee, and Missouri. Missouri should be a game that, Missouri's pretty bad.
They're awful.
Yeah. You do that and split with Georgia and Tennessee, find a way to win one of those and win your home games. You end up with 4 losses in this league, then at a minimum, you're probably going to tie for the championship. You may win it outright. And so that's the thing from now on. Can you hold serve? And it starts this week with a really, really tough physical week.
Yeah, that's what Bruce Pearl has talked about. He said, if you're a championship team, you've got to win at home. They knew, I think, looking at the slate that was Ole Miss on the road, Bama at home, Florida on the road. At least I thought going into that, I'm like, okay, you steal one of those on the road.
Correct.
Good job. I don't think you're going to win both of those. Again, I'm not saying this loss is, acceptable for Auburn or whatever, but it just seemed like it was good. Look, if they had won this game on the road, I would have said this team might plow through and they might be hitting their stride. They might win the SEC outright at this point. They could still do that. But I think, it did expose a little bit of, a few issues I think that they do have. I don't think when Trey Donaldson isn't on his game, your point guard position does falter a lot. because you hate to say about a freshman, but Aiden, there's something very, very off about Aiden Holloway right now. He is not giving you much in terms of his scoring. And then the matchup, it was a bad matchup for Auburn. And you don't see that very often with this team because they are very balanced and they do a lot of things well. They're a good defense. When we talked about that after the Alabama game, we talked about their front court advantage. You go on the road and Jalen Williams shoots really bad. You go on the road and they double Janai Broome. And not to mention, they've got physical big guys. I mean, they have a really impressive front line at Florida. And they, like you said, they didn't shoot their way out of it. Janai had to pass out of the post a lot, and they didn't shoot their way out of it, particularly in the first half, 1 of 12 from 3 in the first half. Something I go back to, Jason, is what we talked about a little bit. You kind of hope that this ends up being your worst game of the season because there were a lot of uncharacteristic issues. For as bad as things seemed when I think Florida's up by like 29, you're like, okay, we're done. This game's over. So for as bad as things seemed, there were a lot of issues that Auburn has not done this season. Second worst free throw shooting game of the year.
Correct.
Janai Broome goes 1 of 8 from the line. He's an 80% shooter in SEC play, goes 1 of 8 from the line. Jalen Williams starts 1 of 8 from the floor. And there turnovers as well as your most turnovers.
Turnover, 15 times. Don't create many turnovers against Florida.
Only one steal the whole game.
And those are the live ball turnovers is where this team has excelled because they're not a team that's going to run off of a rebound usually. It's usually coming off those turnovers is where they create some of those fast break points. But you're right. It was one of those where, okay, Broome, it reverted back to the NCAA tournament last year. And we hadn't seen that all year long. Jalen, unfortunately, that's every once in a while, Jalen. Every once in a while, you just have one of those games. And it normally happens when you get bigger guys. Because it's tougher to finish for him at 6'10", and that's what Florida has at power forward. They got those big long guys, those lefty hooks in the lane. Those are much more difficult when you're shooting over somebody that's almost 7 foot tall, and we saw that on Saturday. But you're right, there were a combination of things that we hadn't seen from this team really in quite a while.
Yeah, and they'll have to get back on track this week. They obviously did a good job of that after their last time losing on the road. Came home and bounced back and ended up being a 3-game winning streak. They came home last time and were able to bounce back against Vanderbilt. This is very different. You've got 2 teams. Will Kentucky be ranked today?
I don't think they will. I don't think they will.
Not. South Carolina definitely will. South Carolina might be a top 10 team this week. That is going to be a great matchup on Wednesday. That is one of, if not it's probably the hottest team in the SEC. They're looking to beat Tennessee and Auburn on the road. I don't know anyone who doesn't believe in South Carolina at this point, but if they go in there and beat Auburn on Wednesday, you definitely cannot question what they've done. And then College Game Day is coming back for the 4th time to Neville Arena on Saturday against Kentucky. You're obviously hoping that's an atmosphere you can take advantage of. I think 2-0 this week for Auburn, and we'll talk about these games more. We'll get into it the next couple days. 2-0 this week for Auburn, like you said, with the games you have left. Because even if you go to Tennessee and Georgia and you drop both of those, but the key is, Jason, their bye week, they get an entire week off before going to Georgia after this Kentucky game.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really big. If it's before Tennessee, you're like, man, that's still really hard. Georgia's been a tricky place for you. You haven't played super well, and so maybe you'll have a better opportunity to go win there. I just think, every game now has huge SEC implications, of course. But this week, you go 2-0, you hold serve at home. Like you mentioned, you're feeling really good down the stretch, and you'll probably be looking at every game, and you'll be paying attention to the top of the standings and saying, if you're Auburn, how can we win the SEC?
Yeah, every game's meaningful. You're right, and so it starts with, it's that old cliche, but it starts with the next one. I mean, South Carolina is one of the hottest, maybe the hottest team in the country right now. With the way they played, they've taken advantage of their schedule. Now they did, they beat Kentucky and they've won some of those games, but the most difficult part of their stretch is coming up. And so you see, okay, how do they handle that? They're physical, and it's maybe a little bit similar to Florida in that they've got some length, they got some size. The thing about Florida is Todd Golden on the sidelines. That was a big part of this, is that so familiar with Auburn, what they want to do, how they do things, that mindset. And I thought that showed up, especially in the first half on Saturday. So this week is, you're right, regroup, you're home, take care of business. That's the key.
Well, and don't want to take anything away from Florida. I thought like Bruce Pearl said going into the game, sort of an underrated team almost. I mean, they're top 5 in the league right now, but even with that, I think they're a little bit underrated. Golden's going to get them into the tournament this year, and even when they came to Auburn last year and lost that game, like Todd Golden coached a really, really good game there, and so he's obviously done a great job there so far. Like I said, we'll have stuff this week getting ready for those 2 games. Quickly here, Jason, softball. Auburn softball opened over the weekend with a pretty non-standard 1-1-1 record.
Yeah.
At the end of it. The Virginia Tech result was kind of crazy because the Hokies were coming back and kind of giving them a late barrage there in the 7th inning. But then they had to call the game off, so it ended up in a tie instead of in an Auburn loss. And then they were going to play game against Illinois that got canceled because of rain, and a game against Belmont that got canceled because of rain. But this coming weekend as well, Jason, Auburn baseball opens its season. Got a 3-game series against Eastern Kentucky. You've had great preview coverage on our website, and you're going to continue to have that. You even had a baseball story this morning. Just talk to me a little bit about what you're going to be looking for on opening weekend for this team.
Yeah, actually, I hopped out to softball for a few minutes on Friday. They played Virginia Tech twice, and Virginia Tech's probably going to be a team that I think will end up hosting a regional by the time this thing's said and done. I thought they had a really good softball team, so that's a good test for this team as they continue to make some changes. And can they find some offense down the line to kind of string some things together? That'll be the key for them. Baseball opens again at Eastern Kentucky, and get to see Joseph Gonzalez. He's kind of continued to ramp up, and both him and Chase also got to the 70 pitch count. Then Christian Herberholtz is there too. I would expect those guys to be the weekend rotation to start off this season, and a lot of depth on the pitching staff for them, a lot of arms, and this is, I think in theory they would love to treat this almost like Major League Baseball teams do now. Is that once you get past the 6th inning, then you turn it over to 2 or 3 different guys, whether it's Cam Tilley, Will Cannon on the back end of games, Tanner Bauman. You got some different looks. John Armstrong is a side armor. They feel like they've got 3 or 4 or 5 arms bullpen wise that can finish off the last 3 innings of games. And so I think that's going to be the kind of the strength of this team. And then, got some guys back offensively. Bobby Pierce returns, Cooper McMurray, 2 older guys. Then you have Ike Irish and Chris Stanfield in there. Some new additions as transfers. Cooper Weiss at shortstop. Derek Fabian's going to play somewhere in there, whether it be second or third. Mason Mainer's probably going to be your starter in left field. So there'll be some mixing and matching early on. Javon Hernandez, a transfer from Jacksonville State, will be in there. Caden Green, a returner from last year that started second base for the Tigers. So they've got some guys to kind of mix in there, for this team. So I think they're looking forward to just kind of getting it going, seeing how it sets up, and you kind of get into a little bit of a routine once you start playing. So we'll see. But I think the interesting thing for me is going to be Joseph Gonzalez, how he looks kind of getting back, and can he kind of settle in a little bit and continue to get the feel back after having that shoulder surgery and clean up. And then Chase Austin is the most arm talented guy of the older bunch. Cam Tilley probably is of the young guys, but Chase Austin would continue to develop a breaking ball, continue to kind of get that feel. If those guys and Christian Herberholtz can give you that solid right now, if you feel like, hey, every time out, those guys can get us into the 5th or 6th inning and allow us to get that bullpen, then this is a team that's going to be able to challenge folks from beginning to end against maybe the toughest Auburn baseball schedule that I can remember. I think D1 Baseball said, look, based on last season, this is the toughest schedule in the country. And when you open SEC play at Vandy, then you get Arkansas at home. I think the first 4 opponents for Auburn are all in the preseason top 11 in the country when you talk about Texas A&M. And I think LSU's the other. So it's going to be a challenge right out of the gate. This team needs to kind of hit its stride as they get ready here these first couple of weeks.
Yeah, Tennessee rounds out that top group there. And they haven't been too bad. Vols haven't been too bad the last few seasons. In football, Jason, I believe, so we obviously got the recruiting dead period still. Coaches are mostly out right now, but we do have a spring practice start date. It's going to be February 27th. So for the second straight year, it'll be a start at the end of February. And just close out, I mean, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the Super Bowl result real quick from an Auburn-related angle. How about Prince Tega gets his second Super Bowl ring? That's good for a guy that we obviously all enjoyed getting to know here at Auburn. But man, I mean, it we definitely felt like it at the end of the game where I don't know how much time was left in regulation for the Chiefs to go down and tie it, and then once the Niners only got a field goal, you were like, this might be
Yeah,
it. I mean, it's
that's
just
it.
and the Chiefs were so unspectacular all season. But that's why people keep making, I don't think the Mahomes to Brady comparisons are lazy. I think it's just having that guy that just has that clutch gene and the championship DNA, and his team just turns it on at the right time. And man, he certainly is gonna go down as one of the probably the most talented quarterback of this generation, and certainly he's gonna end up as one of the winningest.
Yeah, 3 MVPs already. Yeah, I think there was a minute 50 something left.
Yeah,
They get the ball back, go down and kick a field goal, and have a shot to throw it in the end zone. And then you knew, yeah, when the 49ers didn't score a touchdown in overtime, you're like, that's probably it. Because those guys, when they get those opportunities, they take advantage of it. And I thought it was just exactly what you would expect from a guy like that. And on the other side, you see the issues when you have to kick field goals. Like when you don't go score touchdowns. I think what was the 49ers 6 times in the red zone, something like that, and 4 field goals. I mean, like those are the plays that get you beat. And finishing drives is the most important thing you can do. The Chiefs didn't do that a bunch, but when they had the opportunity, they did it. And so, good way to finish it off. And now have a stretch run without football to get ready for the college football season. Obviously, spring coming up. You're right. Here, just a couple of weeks, they'll get started. Have 1 week of practice, probably 3 days in that first week. Then spring break, they'll take a week off and then come back and then have it wide open for the next 3.5 weeks or so as they get ready for the A-Day game.
yeah. For the first time in at least a few years that I can remember, spring break at Auburn is not the same week as the SEC tournament. I feel like it usually works out that way, but I'm pretty sure I saw on the practice schedule they are practicing the week of the SEC tournament. So I feel like usually that coincides with Auburn spring break.
Mm-hmm.
This year it does not. Yeah, I saw somebody saying, like used to be, or if you're playing a team without one of the best quarterbacks of all time, when you have like the NFL's leading rusher who can just pound it at the end of the game, and a D line or a defensive front for the Niners that was just dynamite all game. Usually that's a pretty good formula to put away a close game, but not when you're not when you're
No,
going against a guy like that.
it's a great formula to do what the 49ers did all season, which is be the most consistent team probably in the NFL. It's a great formula to do those things. Sooner or later, you have to have a guy that when called upon is a difference maker. And it's a different story for a different day, but Cam Newton's drawn a lot of ire for calling Brock Purdy a game manager. And I saw there's a lot of really knowledgeable football folks going, hey, that's the difference between a game changer and a game manager last night. And it's hard to argue with that.
Game manager is not a bad thing.
No, it is not a negative at all. It works great for what they do on offense. But when you get in that situation, you go, okay, who's the guy that can go make a play at the end of the game? Patrick Mahomes made a bunch of those plays at the end of the game, and that was the difference.
So we will be keeping track this week, obviously getting ready Auburn basketball on Valentine's Day against South Carolina. And then, like I mentioned, college game day coming into town. Auburn softball will continue to roll on, and Auburn baseball, like we mentioned, opens up the season this weekend. Bit of a lengthier War Eagle Wakeup. We'll have a few more of these this week. For Jason Caldwell, I'm Nathan King. Thank you guys for joining us. We will talk to you all soon.